Hello, my name is Kate and welcome to the local history of Northern Kentucky on our YouTube channel. Today we'll be taking a look back at the history of two of our local amusement parks featuring images from the library's Faces and Places database. And this first image here shows the theater entrance and the boat landing at Ludlow Lagoon, which is the first park that we'll explore. And this project was announced to the public in 1894, and it had an 85-acre lake with 5 small islands. And attractions at the park included a beach, a clubhouse, a merry-go-round, Ferris wheel, roller coaster, and motorcycle racetrack. In this photo, park guests are enjoying a canoe ride, and this undated image comes from the John Burns slide collection in Faces and Places. And by opening day, the park had over 100 boats that were available to rent. This is another view of the canoes at the Ludlow Lagoon. And in the winter of 1917, there was actually an attempted raid on the canoe fleet at the park. On the night of January 2nd, 1917, Fred Kerms of Bromley awoke to the sound of people dragging a canoe across the ice on the lake near his home. And when he heard this, he grabbed his shotgun and fired 2 shots at the 3 men who were attempting to steal the canoe. And when they heard this, they fled the scene. And Kerms told reporters that he was worried as to who would pay for the damaged canoe. One of the events that occurred early in the park's history was in September of 1896. And this was the Water Carnival event, which took place for Labor Day. And here is a newspaper clipping of this event, which included swimming contests, running and boating races, and other athletic sports. And it ended with a fireworks display. And while the water was a big attraction and draw for park guests to Ludlow Lagoon, it also proved to be a bit dangerous as well. And in August of 1896, Deputy Sheriff George Reese, who was from Covington, nearly drowned at the park, and he was rescued by Attorney Harvey, who was also from Covington. When he was pulled from the water, he was unconscious, and he was able to be resuscitated. These 2 images show the theater and the clubhouse pictured at the right. The theater image was taken about 1905, and this one comes from the Ritchie Family Album Collection. And 1905 was a big year for the park. Before it opened for the summer, they announced that many improvements had been made and new attractions had been added. And one of which was that the clubhouse had been remodeled. And another was that a 7-piece Hungarian orchestra was to play, and they would play during summer afternoons and evenings on the veranda of the clubhouse. Along with this, there was a new chef that was hired for the restaurant, and there were several new attractions. One of them was called Fair Japan, and another was called Myth City, and new buildings were constructed to house these attractions. Ludlow Lagoon was also home to many entertainment and political events. One of these was a show that was done by Charlie Bemis, who the Kentucky Post called one of the most popular vocalists in this section of the United States. And another event took place in May of 1914 when Lily Glenn of Washington, D.C. came to the Ludlow Lagoon to speak on behalf of women's suffrage. And she did this as a part of a tour of the state of Kentucky. The following month, in June of 1914, Edwin Morrow paid a visit to the park, and he did this as part of his gubernatorial campaign. While he was there, he spoke with railroad workers and discussed political issues of the time. And Morrow later served as the 40th governor of Kentucky from 1919 to 1923. Here are a couple of other events that the park held. The one at the left was where the old people at the Old Ladies' Home of Covington were given a jaunt to the park, and they were able to go there in a special car. And another was Candy Kid Day, and this was an event that took place several times over the park's history. And at this event, concessions and rides were provided at a much lower cost for children, and many contests were also held. And here is a view of the park, overlooking the park, and the roller coaster is pictured there, which was called the Scenic Railway, and this was the most popular park, or the most popular ride that the park had. Here is another view of the ride, and in 1895, there was actually a crash on the Scenic Railway, and one of the cars on the roller coaster jumped off the track and it crashed through the trestle. And after this happened, there were a number of boats that rushed toward the area and went to check to see if any park guests who were riding the roller coaster were injured. But fortunately, no one was injured from that incident. This picture on the left shows a pass to the park from 1896, and the one at the right shows the park near its entrance. 1913 was a tragic year for the Ludlow Lagoon, and on July 30th, Odin Johnson, who was a resident of Salt Lake City, he was racing his motorcycle when he lost control and he slammed into the barrier of the track. And as this happened, the gasoline tank exploded, and he and several others were killed, and many more people were injured by the flames and the debris. And another one of the victims was William Michaels, who was from Cincinnati, and he sued the Cincinnati Motordrome and Amusement Company for $25,000 in damages in Kenton County Circuit Court. And he alleged that he was seriously burned in the motorcycle accident. When he filed this suit, it was in September, a couple months after the accident occurred. And at this time, there were suits aggregating nearly $100,000 that had been filed as a result of the accident. And afterwards, there was much debate about whether or not the motorcycle races were safe and if the park should continue them. And they ended up continuing the races, but this event greatly damaged the park's reputation. In 1913, there was a flood which heavily damaged the park. And then 2 years after that, there was a tornado which caused $50,000 worth of damage. And this is a photo of the wrecked Motordrome, which was taken on July 7th, 1915, after the tornado had hit the area. And this comes from the Robert C. Ritchie collection in Faces and Places. This photo is a view of the park looking onto the dancing pavilion and the damage caused by the tornado in this area of the park. The damage from the tornado and the flood, along with the aftermath of the motorcycle accident and the US entering World War I, this all combined to make 1917 the park's last season in operation. And while located across the river, Coney Island has also been a summer attraction for both Cincinnatians and Northern Kentuckians. And its founding dates back to 1867, and then it was called Parker's Grove, and it operated as an apple orchard. And with a location so close to the river, it became very popular, and owner James Parker quickly added a dining hall, a dancing hall, and a bowling alley. And the park was sold in 1886 and then became called Ohio Grove and was headed by 2 steamboat captains. And at this time, riverboats were the most popular means of transportation for park guests. Eventually, the name was changed to Coney Island, and over the years, amusement park rides, a dance pavilion, and sunlight pool were added. And this photo is undated, and it shows crowds walking toward the entrance of the park. And this one comes from the Lawrence Brand collection in the Faces and Places database. And this is a photo of the Coney Island bathing beach from the database. And this is also a photo from the Lawrence Brand collection. One of the ads that appeared early in the park's history was from 1896. And this advertisement stated that Coney Island has the largest and finest playground in the West. Let the children enjoy it next Friday. This colorful photo comes from a postcard, and it shows some of the attractions at the park. One of the long-standing traditions of Coney Island is 4th of July fireworks. And these date back, or this event dates back as far as 1895. And the park placed a note in the paper in anticipation of the events for July 4th, 1895. And they stated that they would have musical concerts, acrobatic acts, balloon ascensions, and fireworks to celebrate. This image at the left shows the entrance to Coney Island as it looked in about 1907. And 1907 was a big year for the park. Several events took place, and one of these was in July of that year when Jack Bennett, who was an aeronaut, he went up a mile in the air with a balloon and came down in a double parachute. And park guests were able to watch this. And in August, there were automobile races, and this drew a large crowd. One of the drivers was Eddie Bald, who was a famous bicycle rider and motor car driver, and he got lots of applause from park guests. Another attraction at the park was the Gilbert family, who were aerialists. And the image there at the right is a couple who is in a car at the park, but this image is undated. And pictured here is Island Queen as it is arriving at Coney. And this steamboat was owned by Coney Island. It was used to ferry park guests between Cincinnati and the park. And along with several exciting events that happened in 1907, it was also a year of tragedy for the park, as Sheriff's Deputy Harry Egbert was killed during a fight. And there were several conflicting versions of this story, but the one that was given by one of his friends who was there was Charles Davis, who stated that they were there for a Newport Eagles outing, and that he and Egbert and a few others went up to Coney Island to attend this outing. And while they were there, they went to the clubhouse and they found that they needed 2 more chairs. So there were 2 empty chairs at a table nearby, and they decided to go over and see if they could get these chairs. And a woman who was sitting at that table did not want them to have the chairs, and they got into a dispute about this. And she ended up throwing a beer bottle at Egbert. And as this happened, more people crowded around, and there was a man that got involved in the argument, and he struck Egbert, and he fell and he struck the cement, which caused his death. And here on the left is a picture of 4 sisters from St. Elizabeth, and they're riding the Lost River ride at Coney. And on the right is the windmill and roller coaster. And pictured here is Newport native Limon Bringman, and this photo comes from his Kenyon College yearbook. And in 1905, Bringman, who was 18 years old, he saved the life of a toddler at Coney Island. And the toddler's name was Francis Hawk, who was 2 years old, and the toddler had fallen into a cistern, and this cistern had been unused. It stated that it had been unused for so long that no one knew what it was. And when he saw that this had happened, many people tried to pull him away from helping, but despite this, he went in under about 6 feet of water and rescued the child from the bottom of the cistern, which was said 14 feet from the surface of the ground. And after that, a rope brought them both back up. And after he rescued the child, he received a silver medal and $2,000 for his education from the Carnegie Foundation. And when he received this, his mother was interviewed, and she stated that he wanted to become a doctor, and that this money would help him pay for his medical education. And this did happen. He did become a doctor, and Bringman grew up in Newport, and he lived on Overton Street in his early childhood, and then the family eventually moved to Washington Avenue. So he was married in 1917, and this is around the time when he left the Newport area. And he spent a couple of decades working as a physician in Cuyahoga County, Ohio. And when he was there, he started a pediatric medicine practice, and he taught pediatrics at what is now Case Western Reserve Medical School. And he did this until about 1935. And then Bringman founded and was president of the Children's Clinic of Ohio. And then he moved his family to Reno, Nevada in 1937, and he remained there until his death in 1957 at the age of 71. Over the years, Coney has held many community and political events, just as Ludlow Lagoon did, and one of which was in the summer of 1908 when Covington railroad workers had an outing at Coney, and Ed Maurer won a contest for the most popular L&N railroad employee. And on August 11th, 1908, another event that took place was when Congressman Ollie James spoke at the Democratic Club, which held an event at the park. And Ollie James was from Marion, Kentucky, and he served in the U.S. House of Representatives from 1903 to 1913, and he later became a senator. And it was also noted often in the newspapers when parties were held and when families visited Coney. And that includes the couple of notes that are pictured here, one of which was when Sally Herndon and Mrs. Fish of Kenner Street in Ludlow visited the park with a number of people. This image shows a photo of an unknown ride at Coney from the Lawrence Brand collection in Faces and Places. And for people who visited the park from Northern Kentucky, Coney often had theme days, and some of these included Newport Day at Coney Island. There was a Ludlow Day, a Covington Day, and a Kentucky Day. And this included a round trip fare on the Island Queen with admission to the park, which is shown there in the advertisement on the left. And this is a photo of Covington Day at Coney Island from Faces and Places, and they're all getting off the Island Queen and heading toward the park. And this was taken about 1928. This is a photo from the swimming pool at Coney, and this is from the Lawrence Brand collection in Faces and Places. There were many notes about school trips to Coney, and one of these took place in 1937, where there were 45,000 tickets that were to be distributed to the Campbell County schools for their outing to the park. And this was sponsored by the Campbell County PTA. And for this event, there were special arrangements that were made with Coney Island Management to have the Island Queen dock at the foot of Columbia Street in Newport. Another of these is the one pictured here, where the Kenton County PTA sponsored an event to Coney Island, and this was from May of 1948. I hope you enjoyed this look back at a couple of our local amusement parks and our pictures from the Faces and Places database. If you have any questions, please give us a call at the local history and genealogy department at 859-962-4070, or send us an email at history@kentonlibrary.org. And for more of our great pictures of Northern Kentucky, visit facesandplaces.kentonlibrary.org. Thanks for watching.